So I wanted to ask about like the subtle emotional facial expressions that you see with all of the characters. Can you tell me a little bit more about like how that process goes? Like when do you decide like there's going to be something here?
It just depends on what the story is. Like if we know that a character is feeling something about that moment, especially if we know that there's something coming up down the line that maybe hasn't been revealed, but that it would make that character feel a certain way, we try to insert in there and not do it. But really, a lot of it's just in an attempt to make these characters feel human. If they're just kind of standing there, blank face, not reacting to the things that are happening, they tend to feel like two-dimensional or just drawings. But when each character reacts in the way that their personality would react, it just makes them feel more unique and something that we feel that these characters need to differentiate themselves from each other.
Yeah, I mean we're like weirdly like weird actors through these characters, because when us or the storyboard artists or the directors or the animators are drawing them, you're inserting what basically you think is appropriate for this character, so you're kind of acting through the drawings. With TV animation, it's a little more tough though, because you can't overly emote or you run the risk of things getting a little weird.
I've noticed, especially with all of the paladins, each of them has a very distinctive style in their facial makeup. Keith is very kind of almost a Bishonen anime style. Lance is almost the more modern anime style that's going on right now. How did you guys come about kind of choosing their...
I mean, that's our character designer.
Yeah.
Through and through. Christy Sang, she's absolutely amazing, an amazing artist, and a fan of basically every genre of anime that's out there.
And she knows them all.
Yeah.
Like, from back.
Wow.
Honestly, half the terminology that she spits at us, I'm like, just do that. Okay. Good. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she does her research, and there's things that even I'm working with these characters regularly, but there are little details that even I didn't realize, were so connected to the other characters until I started having to actually draw that character for a scene that I was doing. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just now realized how incredibly tied together this design language is. And it just is a testament to her talent and her dedication and hard work, and she researches everything, and she really just puts so much thought above and beyond what she would ever need to do.
We'll have design handouts, and her breakdowns for explaining what a new design needs are far more detailed than we would ever bring to the table. We're like, just make that the coolest character you guys have ever seen. And she has basically their backstory mapped out and what their emotional state is, and it's really impressive. But it adds so much.
Speaking of that, and sort of going along, one of my favorite aspects of the show is the physical comedy and how that sort of manifests through the facial expressions. I'm thinking of Lance's face.
Yeah,
when
Lance is always so
finally reveals that she's a girl, and how. My question is more so how do you balance the really fun stuff with sort of the emotionally heavy beats and making sure that everything is.
I think you just kind of have to feel your way through it. It's like if you're in a situation where everything is so intense that just throwing a comedy in it is not really going to help the situation, it's just going to kind of derail the motion of the scene, then you would avoid it. But if you're in a situation where there's a moment to breathe, or maybe you need to bring a little levity, we just kind of try to feel our way through it. I think once you're watching it play out, it's pretty easy to tell whether something's working or not.
Yeah, I mean, and I think from the get-go we set out to make a show that basically could go both, just be as broad as it needs to be. Other shows that we've worked on, it might not have been appropriate, but I think from the get-go we wanted to make a show that could tug at your heartstrings and then just make you almost, slapstick comedy laugh.
And it helps when you have characters that allow for that, because we have these young, zany characters that are just in this crazy world, but then you've got the Zarkons who you're never going to see Zarkon's face do that. He's he's a serious guy. Yeah. But Paige, Karan, even, and Lance, they can all go crazy.
But and it extends just all the way down story. You can have a Blade of Marmora, or you can have a Maul episode, and they both fit in that same universe.
What's the difference between writing for the animation team versus writing for the comics that are supposed to fill in the gaps in the story?
I mean, that's more of a question probably directed towards Tim. We've taken a couple stabs at writing ourselves. And I think within the show, again, it's just you're using your gut because you build this universe. You know, you have this starting point, which was the original show, and from there, it's all pretty unique stuff. So writing for the show, a lot of the times when we're in the writers' room and we're breaking stories, you're just sort of using your gut and going with what your gut's telling you. What are these characters? Where do they need to evolve to eventually? And what's the best way for them to get there?
And at certain points, like up front, you definitely need to be kind of writing the character and figuring that character out. But at this point, like these characters have such fleshed out personalities that they kind of you kind of don't really have a choice. Like, you already know how Keith is going to react. You already know how Lance is going to react, and you just have to make the story work with that.
There have been a couple pitches where, like, I think somebody pitched out a very different take on the character, and then it was so awesome and shocking. It's like, all right, how do we make this character like start doing that, and how will that come across to the audience? So I think sometimes where things zig, where they're supposed to zag, I think that's an interesting thing for the characters to go through, and interesting if you can make it work in the writers' room.
Now, with this being television, but on Netflix with the kind of everything released in a block, it's kind of a different beast than normal television release schedule. What is it like, your time and work schedule on something like this? Because I know when we were talking about between season 1 and season 2, a lot of season 2 had already been done by the time season 1 had come out. Is that the same that's going on with season 3, or are you guys?
I mean, animation's such a huge endeavor that you know. A lot of times it's interesting. We'll see like online comments about like, oh, the story should go here, and it's like the story's been written and it's been done. It's locked. So yeah, you need a lot of lead time, and things are definitely done. We, without giving too much away, we're definitely far ahead of probably where people think we are.
Yeah. I think if a season is going to come out in a certain amount of time, just know it's already
done.
made.
Yeah.
So going off of that, I want to have a season 3 question for you. Paige, will she resume the search for her father and brother? Will we meet them and get to see what's up with them and know what happened?
I think Paige has never stopped the search.
Yeah.
Like she's kind of reprioritized, and so she's no longer in the mindset of it's me before everything else.
I like that.
Okay, Voltron is important too, but she hasn't completely put a stop. It's like if she gets the chance, she's still going to search, and we saw that in season 2 when she was still searching for her brother and father while carrying out their mission. And so I think that's a thing that's going to continue.
I think the tough thing too is with so many characters, we can't devote too much time to any one character, so you kind of have to just assume that while Pidge is off camera, she's been doing that stuff.
Yeah, she's Netflix for more episodes.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to see all of the characters' reactions to Keith's Galra heritage reveal, and is there anything you can tell us about how Lance or Pidge or the other characters reacted?
I think they're not quite as exposed to the horrors of the Galra as Allura is. They're new to it, so Keith being Galra, they still associate Keith more with Keith than with being in Galra. Allura's reaction was very different because she knows exactly what the Galra are capable of, and so it was just something that was kind of hard for her to accept.
Yeah.
And even though she knows Keith just as well as the rest of the guys, she's witnessed him be a good person, but it was still something that she had to come to terms with on her own time, and she did. Like any good person, she learned from her mistakes, and she fessed up and she apologized, and they moved forward. But it's I think it's safe to say that though there may have been some shock from the other paladins, none of them really turned their back on it.
I feel like Hunk's the best representation of the rest of the team. He's like, how much of you is Galra exactly? And so I think that's kind of where the rest of the team stands.
Yeah.
And another to go on with Allura, she passed all this judgment on Keith and on the Galra, even with the Galra that were helping them. Now that she knows that Hagar is one of her race, is that going to cause? I mean, obviously, without getting into too many spoilers, is that going to cause some introspection within her? Are we going to see maybe her looking?
I think it just allows us to play that duality that there's no black or white. There's a whole lot of gray area in between. And I think if anything, it just allows her mind to expand even further and be more understanding of sort of the horrors of war and
Yeah, I think we started her in this place where she seemed like she was the most knowledgeable. She knew everything, but now I think even she's realizing that she has a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And so it just puts her kind of in that same boat with the rest of our paladins. They're all pretty young and they're all still growing and learning.
I think that was the interesting thing, is that she has this sort of regal quality, and she has the 10,000 years of history behind her, but she's just as young as everybody else. She's coming to all these realizations almost in real time with everybody else. She has that history, so she has those prejudices kind of set in place, and for her to overcome them, she's handling them like any teenager would.
I literally just had a question on my table. Okay, so here we go. One of my favorite things about the show is just seeing how when you pair two people, or when you send one person off to have their own episode, sort of what the hijinks are that can ensue. So what maybe fun things do we have in store for our paladins, and like pairing up and going on missions in this coming season?
I mean, that's always the fun thing, is
Yeah.
kind of getting them with the paladins. You don't usually see these certain groupings, so grouping them together in these, that's always fun for us.
It's something that we really enjoy doing. Only problem is we don't have them all together. They can't form Voltron.
Yeah.
So we try to fit it in where we can, but there's always a very big interest from the parties at play that make sure we see Voltron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we try to play with it as much as we can, but unfortunately we don't get like large swaths of episodes to be like, and one person and two people.
Yeah.
They kind of need to.
And sometimes we have to like sneak it in on like non-mission based stuff. It's like these two characters interacting on the castle ship, or that's kind of how we have to sneak it in sometimes. But we love doing it, just for the record.
It's the best part, just seeing, like, I mean, we've all had that weird friend dynamic where it's like, in a group of three, you're great, but then as soon as that, like, mutual friend goes, it's like,
Things
this
get a
is
little weird.
Yeah. And, and I've always enjoyed that, just seeing, like, how do these two friends interact? So, it's fun.
Awesome.